I love Superman 79 by Richard Donner. It was as formative a cape flick to me as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, The Dark Knight, and yes, select films from the MCU. Between the juggling act of camp, sincerity, and visual variety, it works as an apt slice of 70s Americana. Deep space apocalypse, small-town nostalgia, urban rom-com, disaster thriller, and of course, superhero film.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
All of these play on the character's mythology up to that point, and Donner's eye for that period, combined with Christopher Reeve's pitch-perfect performance as the central character, made for a classic ride that can be enjoyed to this day. But I'm not so fixated on the past that I don't think a fresh take on Supes can be done. While I did love Superman Returns when it came out, mostly because it's a semi-sequel and stylistic homage to the original two films, I concede these days that it's a conceptually flawed piece with some questionable elements. As far as selling the vibe of what if Superman was real and lived in the modern world, I still kind of fuck with it, but that angle could definitely be pushed further today. Enter Zack Snyder, the face of the modern DC film. He had already done a pretty admirable, if textually copy-pasted, film version of Watchmen. I've seen bits of 300, iconic visuals, iconic one-liners, and it seems like a fun time, if subtextually sussy. Back to Zack though. So long as the guy has solid material to work off of, he can put out a visually striking final product that sells the ideas of other people. When he ventures outside of that, well, you'll get a grim piece of cornball pulp with the subtlety of a teenager's LARPy fanfiction he wrote in an English class. So, combine that objectively impressive visual language with an original story and interpretation of beloved characters, and you get Man of Steel is just okay. At best. It's got spectacle, just a very modern and, in many people's eyes, cynical version of it. It's got mythos, just a very sterile and washed out version of it. It's got humor, it's just a
I just think he's kind of hot.
hit and miss version of it. It's got appeals to and subversions of what's been done before with Superman, just not the kind that speak to my own standards and taste. Bombastic and kinetic, yet stark and off-putting. Epic in scale, yet hollow in the middle. Equipped with a lot of technology and firepower, just to no real end. It's a decoy Death Star, where you don't even have to fly along the trenches to find the weak spot. Anyway, I say all of this to illustrate that Man of Steel, as a standalone superhero film, ain't my thing. But that's not the point of this video. No, the point of this video is to highlight the one thing that bugs me most about this movie. Something that might sound like a nitpick, but in my view, represents the most missed opportunity with the theming and execution of this origin story. It's this scene right here, post-climax, in a flashback that kicks in while they're visiting Jonathan Kent's grave. Golden hour, sun-kissed homestead, little Clark himself, Fido in tow, basking in the serenity of a Midwestern canvas, standing triumphantly with a blanket tied around his neck like he's... You feel me? Who the fuck's he pretending to be? This right here is pulling so very hard on your preconceived notions of Superman, his roots in American tradition and nostalgia, that they knew that they could use it in the trailers and it would work perfectly in conveying Superman origin story, present day. And yet it suffers from a fundamental flaw that neglects a massive Kryptonian elephant in the room. This fantastical pose, this childlike mimicking of heroism, only exists because Superman as a pop cultural touchstone exists to be referenced by people. To paint this a bit more thoroughly, Superman as a creation was the Big Bang of superhero iconography. There were prototypes in pulp magazines, sure, but none of them had this precise air or demeanor. They were just these acrobatic wonders with guns who'd go on adventures. Much more akin to Batman, who, yeah, is an equally iconic superhero, but unless you're going for that uber-campy angle of Super Friends or Adam West, that's not his essential silhouette. It's not Zeus, it's not Hercules, it's not some obscure emperor, or Clark pretending to be Caesar or Napoleon. He'd be getting bullied even more than he already was. None of those cats are tied to putting your fists on your hips. Hands, maybe. Fists, no. You know what's going on when you see this. I think it's real neat that the original idea for Superman on a physical level was inspired by Douglas Fairbanks, the OG swashbuckling king who gave way to the likes of Errol Flynn. Meanwhile, comedian Harold Lloyd, who's best known for hanging off of a clock tower, he was the inspiration for Clark Kent. And literary inspirations lie in the works of Edgar Rice Burroughs, who wrote the John Carter of Mars books. Yeah, no way this kid was reading them shits. Or watching them shits. That's not something he did. I guess you could call this a nitpicky plot hole that's triggering the fuck out of my tinfoil nerd brain, but more than that, it just sums up my biggest gripe with this movie in general. They didn't lean as much into the inception of Superman as a fact of life as they could have, instead taking surface-level liberties that imply that direction while relying entirely on our own understanding of Superman 101. Yeah, there's plenty of ad hoc readings of the movie where it's less of a superhero film in the traditional sense and more of a surrealistic science fiction film where flying aliens do quadrillions of dollars in property damage and civilian deaths. But I'm sorry, from where I stand, something this high budget and reliant on IP doesn't get that pass from me, and I like camp. I like liking things. I'm that guy now. But if I want goofy melted camp where you can pop on genre lenses to enjoy the thing more, I'll watch Venom. There's a good time.
Look guys, it's just a rom-com in disguise. I ship the demon monster and his host.
Me too, buddy. Me too.
Haha, I like this epic parkour destruction video. Or this guy who looks like Superman, except he's not Superman because wears his underwear. He's just like destroying everything. It's a fun time, if you look at it that way.
In a purely structural sense, they were remapping what had already been done before to a gritty, post-Christopher Nolan aesthetic, completely neglecting the fact that there would be no superhero mythology to make note of in this specific universe. You can stuff obligatory references to the real world like Marvel's been doing for over a decade. Ooh, Jon Stewart or Sean Hannity or some shit. They're talking about the political ramifications of Gods Among Us. Oh look, it's the we got a badass over here guy who's really bad at enjoying things, talking about how we're not alone in the universe. Ooh, such novel and stimulating and thought-provoking threads to inject into a cape film. Wonder where they're going with all of this. I hope it's cool. We can get as academic and philosophical as we want about how unique and essential this interpretation of DC lore is, but at the end of the day, these existential elements just seem like they're there to distract us from a bland and tonally confused project, where you could have explored a world where there was no prior precedent to a superhero or a living god among mortal men. So little time is spent developing the intricacies before he's a grown-ass man flying around, making craters and punching aliens who match his own destructive prowess. He's already spectacular. There's no awkward period, save for when he's learning to fly. We get none of that often forgotten period of Superman stories where he wasn't so much, Superman, dun-da-da. He was just a guy with exceptional strength running around helping people. Like, that was it. They could have done that for a little while before he was, Heracles 3.0, but they didn't do that. It was just like, he's Jesus. Remember, Jesus? The very essence of this film wants to have its cake and eat it too. And for me, it's at its most obvious and lazy with this one scene where Superman references his own damn self. And I'm supposed to act like that's not weird and devoid of self-awareness on an artistic level. I don't like it. I don't like this movie. I don't like this scene. And, I won't pick on Zach too much because God knows popular media digs deep enough into his steez as it is. I'm just going to say that him wanting very much to make a Supes who punches stuff in movie 1, or he wants a Batman who's old and kills people, or he wants to adapt Ayn Rand. It makes sense to me. On brand, a natural extension of his shtick. I'm very civil and not at all petty. BB Supes sucked.
Why does he have to be a fighter jet? The S means hope. He's an agent of peace. Why does he have to be a fighter jet? He's supposed to be graceful. He doesn't need shockwaves.